In today's lesson, we will master the fundamental definition of a function within the Cambridge IGCSE Additional Mathematics syllabus. We have three main objectives. First, defining a function using set notation. Second, identifying functions from mappings. And third, applying the vertical line test. Understanding functions is vital because they form the backbone of calculus, trigonometry, and coordinate geometry. By the end of this video, you will be able to distinguish between simple relations and true mathematical functions, a skill essential for securing top marks in your exams. In additional mathematics, we define a function as a specific type of relation. Specifically, it is a rule that assigns each element in a set A, which we call the domain, to exactly one element in a set B, known as the codomain. We often use mapping notation to express this. The letter F denotes the function, and the arrow shows that X is mapped onto Y. The key word here is unique. For a relation to be a function, every input from the domain must have one, and only one corresponding output in the codomain. If an input points to two different outputs, it is not a function. Let us look at a practical example to distinguish between the domain, codomain, and range. Consider a function f that maps x to x squared. If our domain, set A, contains the elements -1, 1, and 2, and our codomain, set B, contains 1, 4, and 5, we can see how they map. -1 squared is 1, 1 squared is also 1, and 2 squared is 4. Notice that while the codomain is the set of all possible values, the range is the set of actual outputs. Here, the range is just 1 and 4. Even though -1 and 1 both point to the same output, this is still a function because each input points to exactly one value. To determine if a relation is a function, we categorize the mapping. There are three main types you need to know for the exam. First, we have a one-to-one mapping. Here, each unique input has a unique output, and each output corresponds to exactly one input. This is a function. Next is a many-to-one mapping. This is where multiple different inputs result in the same output, like our previous example where both -1 and 1 map to 1. This is also a function because every input still only has one destination. Finally, we have a one-to-many mapping. In this case, a single input results in multiple possible outputs. This fails the exactly one rule. Therefore, a one-to-many mapping is not a function. In your exam, if you are asked to justify why a relation is not a function, you should state that it is a one-to-many mapping. When we are given a graph instead of a set of numbers, we use the vertical line test to identify a function. If any vertical line, x equals k, intersects the graph at more than one point, the relation is not a function. Notice this parabola. Any vertical line we draw only crosses the curve once. This is a function. Now, look at this sideways parabola, x equals y squared. If we draw a vertical line at x equals 2, it hits the curve at two different points, √2 and -√2. Because one x value corresponds to two different y values, this is a one-to-many mapping. Therefore, it fails the vertical line test and is not a function. In the Cambridge syllabus, you must be able to apply this test quickly to sketches. Let's apply these rules to a typical IGCSE exam-style question. The question asks, is the relation x squared plus y squared equals 4 a function? Justify your answer. To solve this, we can test a value from the domain. Let's choose x equals 0. Substituting 0 into the equation, we get 0 squared plus y squared equals 4. Simplifying this, we are left with y squared equals 4. When we solve for y, we get two possible values, y equals 2 or y equals -2. Since the input 0 maps to both +2 and -2, the exactly one rule is broken. Graphically, this equation represents a circle, and a vertical line through the center would hit the top and bottom of the circle, failing the vertical line test. To secure an A star, you must avoid these common pitfalls that students often make in the exam. First, many students confuse the codomain with the range. Remember, the codomain is the set of all potential values in set B, while the range is the set of values that are actually mapped to by the domain. Second, some mistakenly think that many-to-one mappings are not functions. They are. As long as each individual input only points to one output, it doesn't matter if multiple inputs share that same output. Third, students often confuse the vertical line test with the horizontal line test. The vertical line test checks if a relation is a function. The horizontal line test, which we will cover later, checks if a function has an inverse. Finally, ignoring the domain. A relation might be a function for one domain, but not for another if the mapping isn't defined for all elements in the set. Always check that every element in the domain has a partner in the codomain. Here are some top tips for your Cambridge examination. First, use technical terms. When explaining why a relation is not a function, use the specific phrase, "It is a one-to-many mapping." Examiners look for this exact terminology in mark schemes. Second, sketch for clarity. If you are unsure about an algebraic relation, draw a quick sketch. Visualizing the curve makes the vertical line test much easier to apply and helps prevent silly mistakes. Third, use mapping diagrams. For discrete sets, draw a mapping diagram with arrows. This makes it instantly clear if any element in the domain has more than one arrow coming out of it. Fourth, always read the domain. Check the domain specified in the question. Sometimes a relation like y squared equals x is made into a function by restricting y to be only positive values. Finally, show your working. Even if a question is only worth 2 marks, show the substitution you use to prove a one-to-many relationship. This ensures you get method marks even if your conclusion is slightly off. It is time to test your understanding. Please pause the video and attempt these 3 questions. Take a moment to solve these before continuing to the solutions. Let us go through the solutions to see how you did. For the easy question, each input has only one partner. The fact that 1 and 2 both map to 2 makes it many-to-one, but it is still a function. For the medium question, picking x equals 0 gives 2 y values. Graphically, this is a parabola opening to the right, which fails the vertical line test. In the hard question, because we are told to consider both positive and negative roots, one input like 4 results in 2 different outputs. This is a one-to-many mapping, so it cannot be a function. To wrap up today's lesson, remember these essential points for your revision. First, a function is a rule where every element of the domain has a single unique partner in the codomain. Second, while multiple inputs can share the same output, a single input can never have multiple outputs. Third, the vertical line test is your quickest tool for graphs. Any intersection at more than one point means the relation is not a function. Finally, always use precise mathematical language in your exam answers to clearly communicate your reasoning and secure full marks.